This is a Renew original recording. Hello and welcome to Season 3 of Believe in People, the British podcast award-winning series exploring addiction, recovery and the stigma that surrounds them. I'm Matthew Butler, your host, or as I like to say, your facilitator. Today I'm joined by Dr. Lewis Raymond Taylor. Once considered beyond help, Lewis transformed a life shaped by childhood trauma, addiction, violence and repeated prison sentences into one dedicated to personal development and helping others change. He's the founder of the Coaching Masters, an international speaker, author of the newly released Unlimited, and the subject of the Netflix documentary, The Psychopath Life Coach. In this conversation, we explore addiction as an attempted solution, the impact of trauma and identity, recovery, responsibility, and what it really means to turn adversity into an asset. One of the passages that really stood out to me in your book was where you write that all the booze, the drugs, the destruction of things, other people and yourself was attempts to drown out something inside of you. You then describe obviously the prison sentences, the missing teeth, a cracked jaw, knife wounds, a hospital admission, and waking up in cells and not really remembering what had happened there. So most people, I think, hearing that story would probably conclude that the alcohol, the drugs, and even possibly a love for violence was the problem. But from reading the book, I get the sense that you see those things very differently. So I guess these were your actual attempted solutions at something. Looking back now, how much was the pain, the belief or feeling underneath all of that? What was so powerful that even those consequences weren't enough to make you stop those habitual behaviours?
There's a lot to unpack there.
It was a long one. I like to start with a long one,
yeah.
And then
lots to talk about from there. Yeah, so as I said in my book, I don't believe that drugs and alcohol is the problem. I believe it is the solution to the problem. Right. I don't think I was fully aware of what my problem was. I remember there was one time in rehab, I'm sure we'll get onto that, where I was starting to become more aware and wanted to be more curious about, myself. And I put my hand up and I said, what do you do if you have a problem, but you don't know what your problems are? Because I knew there was something going on. My head just felt stuffed and crammed and busy, but I didn't really know how to pinpoint what was going on for me. Also, a lot of it felt normal. I know it sounds bizarre, but obviously the denial obviously it was a big factor. But I'd grown up with my friends doing the same sort of things. I kind of liked the chaotic lifestyle. So in part of my mind, I guess I was justifying it as a choice that I was making. And also, I'm sure we'll touch on the whole antisocial personality disorder that I have, which probably a lot of people in addiction do have, especially a lot of people in prison. Maybe not so extreme as the categorized as the psychopath one that, I've been labeled with, but personality disorders are actually very common. I think they're about 30% of the population in some respect. And that does come with some symptoms of kind of not fully understanding the consequences of your actions and, that kind of behavior just feeling normal. So I was sort of going through life. I wasn't really in control of it. I was actually spiraling out of control. And that's another thing I did mention in my book. Life felt always like it was spiraling out of control and I was just sort of going with it. And even when I did try and make some changes and they were very small, I would just find myself always back where I started. And then I would, when I started to change my mindset, which is something I never thought would be possible, I started realizing that things could spiral into control. Yeah, which is something that I think that I coined. I don't know if anyone else has ever said that before, but that's kind of how it felt. It was like walking on the right side of the conveyor belt in the airport. I always felt like I was walking backwards, like walking against the tide almost. I made one step forward and now I'm 10 steps back again. Why does this keep happening? Because when you're a bit more aware of yourself, you start to realize your triggers and your traumas and your issues and your behaviors and things, and you can kind of manage them, anticipate them, preempt them. But if you're not aware of them, they just run the show. So I can't even remember your question, but I hope that answers some of it.
No, I get it. I suppose what we're really looking at is, was addiction serving a purpose for you, and what was the purpose it was serving?
Yeah, so there's a few different things for me. This is only something that I realized in hindsight. It wasn't at the time. I don't know if it's the same for a lot of other addicts, but for me, I didn't wake up feeling like I needed to necessarily take drugs to fix or numb or avoid something. It was just what I did to cope subconsciously. And I look back on it in reflection and I think that's obviously why I was doing it. So a few things. because of this antisocial personality disorder, because of the trauma that I've experienced, it's an age-old debate, nurture, nature, my environment, my mental health, who knows what it could have been. But as a result, my emotions are completely shut down, almost non-existent or very blunted and stunted. And they've been like that from a young age. So I think there must have been a part of me that was on a quest to feel anything, and adrenaline and obviously chemical, reaching for something external to fix the internal problem. I'm sure you've heard that one. Was something that worked for me. I can feel very numb. I can feel very baseline. And nowadays I can be more comfortable with that, or I can use other more productive things that stimulate me, that are more productive. But back then, I just wanted to feel something. So drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, anything that gave me something, I just subconsciously thought, I feel good. I want more. And I guess that was part of it. There was also anger. So with the personality disorder that people don't really understand is you can experience actually anger, frustration, and also interestingly, the very similar symptoms of addiction, the anger, the restless, the irritability, the discontent, those ones are still prevalent with people with personality disorders. So I think that I was quite angry as well, and I obviously wanted to avoid that. Obviously, the problem with that is when you combine that with drugs and alcohol, the anger becomes worse, but it becomes worse on an outward to other people rather than an internal anger. So on a day-to-day basis, I think I could sometimes definitely feel angry and irritable. And in a sense, the alcohol would alleviate that from me, but then push that burden onto somebody else.
I'm interested in the sense of like normalcy that you talked about in terms of just using drugs. It was just something that you did. Why was that? Because if I take myself, for example, who probably had a very different upbringing to yourself based on some of your experiences, taking drugs, drinking alcohol, all that thing seems so far removed from normalcy for me. Why do you think those things was normal for you?
I think it started because my mum and dad my dad was an alcoholic. My mum drank on and off, but sometimes every day for a long time. They were both drunk. And I didn't really see them as alcoholics. I just saw them as adults that drank, and I just thought that was normal. So I started drinking young. But it was recreational. It was down the park. It was drinking cider. It was messing around, But, the whole gateway thing, then it was weed, and then it was this, that, and the other, and the people that I was spending time with. So I think there was that natural element of kind of progression through sort of slipping down the wrong path and being sort of shown it from a young age and not realizing the negative impacts of that. But again, it was just, I didn't see it really as that bad. That's the biggest problem. And something that I have spoken about as well is, again, I don't know if this is my personality. I don't know if this is a disorder. It's very difficult to marry up my version of the world with someone else's and go, do you feel like this or do I feel like this? Is this an addict thing? Is this a psychopath thing? But all I know is I don't like the idea of normal. Like, even when I was in the thick of my rock bottom, I would prefer that than a normal life. I remember being in a prison bus, in a sweatbox, being taken to prison in a tiny little cell in the back of a bus, looking out the window, looking at people walking to work and going, God, I'm glad I'm not them. And that was
that's insane, isn't it?
It is, but I was genuine, oh God, that must be awful. I was sitting there. So the thing is, I have this, and this could be seen as grandiose sense of self. I don't know what it is, but I've always had this tiny little niggle in the back of my head that, two voices actually. One is, Lewis, you're here for something big. I can't comprehend it. So that was almost a little bit hard to understand. So I would just kind of brush that off. And then there was also the voice that comes from my dad that's, you're bad, you're unlovable, you're a buffoon, you're stupid. Yeah. So that was confusing. But there was this kind of feeling but this kind of intuition, this something inside saying you're here for something big, but it doesn't matter what. And it was almost like if it was something big but bad, that was okay. If it's something big that was good, that was okay, but it just had to be big. And I remembered I was in rehab because I sort of did break this thing down because this seems crazy, right? And I don't know if this was the root cause of it, but it definitely created something for me. I was talking to a counsellor in rehab and I said, I hate the idea of living a normal life. Like, no, I don't want that. Because I remember being in rehab and I would say, what do you do for fun? What do you do for excitement? And I was thinking, oh my God, they just sit in church halls. This looks miserable. I'd think I'd rather be in prison, I didn't realize all the things you could do after, and also the fact that I would enjoy those things. Because I thought, oh, cool, what am I going to do? Jump out of a plane? Like, that sounds awful. Like, I haven't done that actually, but the idea of that didn't even sound interesting. But obviously, when you change as a person, different things become appealing. But anyway, I said, I don't like the idea of being normal. And he said, well, how do you know? I said, I just don't. He said, how do you know if you've never had it?
It's interesting, isn't it? To kind of spin that back on you.
Yeah, and I thought maybe because something I have realized in other people when I'm coaching is sometimes people say they don't want something because they think they can't have it. It's easier to it's easier to accept, or it's easier to say, look, I don't want this. Like, actually, a good example of this is a girlfriend that I'm actually with now, funny enough. And I don't know why this came up straight away, but the first time I met her, she just randomly told me, I don't want to get married, I don't want to have kids. And I thought, that can't be true. All women want that. I said, that's not true. I said, you do. She's like, no, I don't. Trust me, I don't. I said, you've had some bad relationships, haven't you? She's like, yeah. I was like, it's easier to tell yourself that, isn't it, than admit that's exactly what you want. And she was like, how do you know that?
But it's true, though, yeah, isn't it? How many times do we do that? Because then it feels like our choice, doesn't it? It feels like we've got that power over it, that we don't want that, when really,
and it can apply it to all sorts of things, really, couldn't you? I mean, oh no, I wouldn't want to have a business, or that'd be too stressful. Not for me. I'd rather have, or whatever it might be. It's much more comfortable to say you don't want it than it is to accept that you do, but know the challenges and the obstacles and the fear and the everything that comes with it, and also the potential of having it and losing it.
Yes.
What about if you have the woman that wants the family, but also has the fear of someone leaving her, or being financially insecure or something like that? There's a double part of it, isn't there? So I'd rather not have it than have it and lose it,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about my own life experiences there, but I used to say for the longest time that I never wanted to get married, and the reason is deep down, I know now that it was my mum and dad split up after 21 years.
Yeah.
And my dad used to say things like 21 years wasted, 21 years done, and I was like, well, I never want to feel like that. So for the longest time, I said I never wanted to get married. But I did. I kind of wanted that, that life. And now I've been married for, 7 years, I think. But I remember for the longest time, I would say I didn't want that, because that was easier than thinking I don't ever want to be in the situation that my dad's in. And I could still very much be in that situation one day, but still, for the longest time, that was my response to it. I don't want that.
Well, that's, I talk a lot about that as well in terms of the stories we tell ourselves subconsciously, the beliefs that are formed from our experiences. We're always absorbing information at every moment. We have, trillions of bits of data coming through our senses at every moment in time, and it doesn't make sense to keep processing that. So from a young age, you'll use the information around you and store it as fact to navigate the world. And if that's your experience, you'll assume that would be your own experience. I mean, interestingly, when you said that, it kind of made me think about, my parents, and I thought, well, actually, they probably did live a normal life, but they didn't have a good one. So who knows? Maybe that is, maybe that's the thing. So
just to go back on, you mentioned the word buffoon, but the book actually opens with, your father calling you buffoon. And you're right that decades later, you can still hear that word, echoing in your head. It doesn't sound that bad of a word, but it's obviously carried so much weight for yourself. How much of your life have you spent trying to prove your dad wrong?
That's an interesting question, and that comes with another part that I think I can talk about after, which is how much have I spent trying to prove him right, But I wasn't aware of it when I was younger. I believed him. That's the thing. And just to quickly touch on the whole buffoon thing, I never knew what it meant. But we use, a lot of our communication is non-verbal, right? So it doesn't actually sometimes matter what the word is. The way that my dad would say it to me, I knew it was the worst thing. He'd look at me and go, "You buffoon," and I would just be, and you internalize that. So I don't know what that means, but it's bad.
It's just the intimidating tone of voice with it. Yeah.
And he would do it all the time as well. So enough that I would just, and I think I knew roughly what it meant, but not quite, but enough to know, I'm stupid. And he would also say, "You're stupid, you're an idiot, you never amount to anything," and all those things. And I didn't think I want to prove you right or wrong, because I just thought, well, that's true, because what you look for your, the people around you and your authority figures and your parents to navigate the world, and we do naturally believe them a lot of the time, like you just said, in your scenario, you believed your dad said that was 21 years of wasted marriage. So that's now my view of the world. He didn't add in extra weight. He didn't say, well, I did love during those 20 years. I did have some beautiful children. It was a brilliant experience. You just that one sentence and you don't have enough time to analyze it. So it gets placed in the brain. So yeah, he did do that. And I thought it was stupid. So I didn't ever try. Again, I did tell you there was that niggling voice in the back of my head that there was something more, but I just couldn't quite understand what that could ever be. And yeah, so proving him right and wrong is a similar thing. So I remember I was in prison, and it was after I decided to change my life, and I was in the education department, and I was 25 years old at this point, and I'd signed up for maths and English, and it was functional skills level 1 and 2, which is the equivalent of about a 10-year-old. And I went in there, and I was like a child. So I literally screwed the paper up, threw it away, threw it across the room, crossed my arms up and said, I'm not doing this shit. Like an idiot. Yeah. And then a teacher came up to me, a tutor that was inside prison, and she sat down next to me and she just said, what's the matter? And I actually don't think anyone had ever asked me that before, because my mum was very emotionally switched off. No one had ever asked me about my feelings. No one had ever asked me if I was all right or any of the bad behaviour I'd ever done. No one actually said, Lewis, what's up, mate? Like, what are you doing that for? No one. I don't know why. I got like punished, but no one ever tried to figure it out. And she said that, and I just blurted out, I don't understand. But then when I said that, I was confused by what I just said, because I thought, how do I know I don't understand? I don't even know what we're teaching. I don't even know what this class is about. I haven't even looked up at the board. I don't even know what we're trying to learn. I've just automatically assumed I can't understand. And it's caused this frustration. And it was then that I realized that, I don't know how I realized it in that moment, but I realized that it had come from like my dad, because she was really supportive and she supported me. And then I started to learn, and I started to learn quite quickly. So it started off with thinking that he was right. Then it started with, we'll get onto it later on in life, but even to this day, I do think that I do still try and prove him wrong. But it's a motivation for me. Now, as someone in mindset and personal development and motivation, it's probably not the best thing to advocate for, because, you should always be doing this for yourself, and you shouldn't be doing this to fill some inner void, and you should be doing this to, be proud of yourself. But motivation is motivation nonetheless, and I mean, I used to have a poster up on my wall that I put up just when I came out of rehab, and it was, can I swear on it, by the way?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's cool.
And it was, sometimes I feel like giving up, and then I remember I've got a lot of motherfuckers to prove wrong. Yeah. And that done me well, because I would look at it and go, yeah, I'm going to prove them wrong. And it is to my dad, and even to this day. And I could change that program, and I could really break that down, I think. But at the same time, it's not causing me much distress. Well, it's not causing me any distress. I know that it's not healthy. I could probably do with getting rid of it. But at the same time, it is beneficial, because it is still motivating nonetheless. Because I do want to say, fuck you, Dad. Yeah. Fuck you, look, I'm not stupid, Yeah. So, yeah, there is a lot tied to that.
I guess really, from your experience and from the experience of maybe peers, or obviously the time that you've spent in prison, do children become the labels that they're given?
I mean, I'm a classic example of a label. I mean, everyone told me I was bad. My dad told me I was bad. I was almost expelled from primary school. I was expelled from a secondary school. I had an ASBO, antisocial behaviour order. I went to a young offenders institution. Court told me I was bad. Police told me I was bad. Psychiatric assessments give me diagnosis, you're bad. Everyone around me told me I was bad, so I assumed I was bad. I didn't even assume, it was. Yeah. And bad people do bad things, and that's not a justification, but I really do think that, identity very much creates up behaviour. And then it's self-perpetuating, right? Because bad people do bad things, and then they feel like bad people, and then do more bad things. So so much of it comes back to the identity and the label that you're wearing. It doesn't always have to be like necessarily a mental health stigmatized label, but just who you think you are as a person, how you see yourself. And of course, I have had all sorts of labels as well, especially the sort of mental health ones. They never really affected me, though, to be honest. I've never really cared too much about labels, because I understand them. Because I know that you was told that you've done some information but deliberately not fully prepped, because you want to have the juicy conversation, right? But I don't know how much you know and how much of this is a surprise. But when I was going for a pre-sentence report, which is, so I was arrested for some very violent offences because I was very angry at the world. Stepping back a little bit, I never really felt loved. Well, I didn't feel loved. I don't know if that wasn't there or I couldn't receive it or experience it, but there was this internal void. And I sort of associated love to significance in my brain. I can't feel the emotions, but I can understand them intellectually. And I can't think love, but I can think significance. So love to me is significance. And I went looking for that. And I did that in acting, singing and dancing, which my family did provide for practically. They would do that. It was just a more emotional nurturing behind the scenes and that sort of thing that wasn't there. And then I was sexually abused there. So that was a trauma. I didn't feel anything of it, to be honest, but I know it must have had an imprint. And I went through life looking for this significance, and I did it in various different ways. One of them I found in crime, in destruction, in violence. It did give me something. It gave me the attention. It gave me the significance of people talking about me. And I didn't care if they spoke about me, in a good way or a bad way, as long as they were talking about me. Like, I liked the publicity of it, and still parts of that still remain true based on what we're talking about today, But I got a release through fighting, to be honest. It wasn't like necessarily just the release through the rage. I don't think it was more, I felt powerful. I felt like I'd taken my power back, like I'd lost it for a lot of my life. When my dad used to hit me, I would freeze. When I was sexually abused, I would freeze. I was a small kid. When I grew up, I'd become bigger, and I thought, well, I can fight, and now I'm the powerful one. And now everyone's saying I'm powerful, and I like that. And I latched onto that, and I got, I was looking at 8 years in prison, actually. And I went for this pre-sentence report, and that's a probation doing analysis of you so they can give you some information to the judge to create more of a well-rounded sentence rather than sort of judging someone on the day. So their background circumstances and things. And when she asked me simple questions like, do you care you go to prison for 8 years? I would just say no. And I didn't. I just didn't. I don't know. I couldn't tell you exactly why, but I just didn't. And do you not care that you've hurt people? No. Because a lot of people go into these pre-sentence reports knowing that they have to behave a certain way. But for me, I just was on a self-destruct at that time and just didn't care. So I just answered her questions as factually as I could, because it's usually my response. It's just, you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. Unless I'm deliberately trying to give them what they want. But in this scenario, I just didn't care. So she said, you don't care that you've hurt people and stuff like that. I said, no. And she sent me for this psychiatric assessment. And I just thought that was a part of the system, part of the pre-sentence report, but it wasn't. It was actually because she'd noticed something different in me. And I went along with it, and he asked me normal questions. And again, I didn't notice anything different. He asked me about all my crimes. And again, I would just very logically, factually answer the questions. I think when he would ask me what happened, and I guess, most people would, I don't know, relate in a very sympathetic, remorseful way. But I would just say I did this and then that and then this, and then I stamped on his head and blah, blah, and then asked me lots of different questions. And it came back with this antisocial personality disorder. And I just thought, okay, it's not right. You've just given me that because you're a goody two-shoes and I'm doing all this bad stuff, but I'm choosing to do it and I'm not crazy. But then I Googled it after and it came up with psychopath. And it turns out that an antisocial personality disorder is actually the clinical diagnosis that you would give someone that is a psychopath, because psychopath is not actually a mental health diagnosis. It's a stigmatized label that goes on a more of a cluster of personality disorders and other things like narcissism and other stuff. But I did get those labels. And then, mental health has been a really interesting part of my life because I completely just brushed that one off. I'm just like, whatever. And then I also had this time in my life where I was being very extreme and then shutting down and sort of going home for a long time and just sort of sitting inside watching films and stuff. And it did look like bipolar because I would go, right, I just want to, go abroad and work as a rep in Magaluf, and then I would do some crazy, like honestly, I can't even tell you, I was swinging from balconies and fighting with the Cypriot mafia out there, and just like that's where I got slashed with a knife and had my teeth knocked out and all sorts of. It was just, I was looking to self-destruct, and then I would just come back from that, and then I would just like retreat. So it looked like bipolar, but actually it could have just been the circumstances. But I went to the doctors on this one because I was thinking this is actually going down the wrong path. I'm very surprised I'm still alive. And they diagnosed me with bipolar type 2 and even give me antipsychotic medication for them. And I thought, okay, I'd take those, but then I was all dosed out and then I had a seizure because I also have epilepsy because of the drink. So I thought, I'm not taking them. And then I brushed that one off as well. I was like, okay, well, that one didn't work. I didn't get the pills that I needed. I'm just, whatever. And then I went to prison a couple of times later. And then inside prison, they diagnosed me with an emotionally unstable personality disorder. So I was thinking, 3 people diagnosed me with 3 different things. They're either all right and I've got 3, or they're all wrong, or one of them's right. So, yeah, I very much had those labels, but I never let it define me.
Do you see yourself as someone who has all those 3 labels, or have you kind of come to the conclusion yourself that you only have one of them that actually fits more in terms of the way you're thinking?
Yeah. Well, this one's a complicated one, but definitely not the bipolar. I think that was a product of my circumstances. The emotional unstable personality disorder, no, I've looked into that. I really don't know how that came about. It's people that can have like emotional outbursts, but mine are typically rage rather than anything else. I won't have anything else other than that. The antisocial personality disorder was really interesting because for 10 years, I just thought, I got diagnosed with that once, and it was on my care plan when I went into rehab. But it was like, I forgot about that. And they had all my background information. It was like, dual diagnosis, and it's like they treated me differently because I'm mental and things. But then what was bizarre is because we'll talk about it, but I transformed my life dramatically. Moved away from my friends and family, moved down to this rehab, away from everything, changed my thinking, completely reinvented myself. But it was when I was sort of going back through education, getting into business, things like that, I thought, I'm still very different to other people, even though my behavior is good and I'm not symptomatically displaying the really negative parts of those disorders. When I actually look at the sort of person I am and the way that I operate, it's still different. And then when I looked at the sort of check marks of this antisocial personality disorder, it was actually still there. But the big thing of what I'd love to talk about today, which is a big part of this book, is understanding that a lot of people stigmatize even those negative traits, because all of those traits have been a massive advantage to me. And I could list them all off and it would be interesting to go onto them, because you'd think that if you was a diagnosed psychopath, which, and I've also done the psychopath checklist because there was a documentary about me on Netflix, The Psychopath Life Coach. And twice now I've had someone do the psychopath checklist with me, which is the closest thing. Robert Hare created it, the closest thing you can be done to being diagnosed with one. And I meet the criteria. So, as far as someone's book or checklist as it goes, I'm diagnosed with it. But, you got to think about these labels. They're just a way to categorize a certain cluster of people, but we're so different. Everyone's so different and everything's on a spectrum. Everyone is neurodiverse in some way, There's no neurotypical people, everyone is different. You've got empaths, which are these people that are extremely consumed by emotion, that they break down on a day-to-day basis, that hear a piece of music and can't stop choking up about it for 3 days. And then you've got people that could kill someone and laugh about it. Now, I'm not saying that I'm anywhere near that, but there's somewhere along that line where emotions, empathy, don't hit me in the same way.
Yeah.
I'm logical. I can take risks. I don't have a fear response. I can be, well, let me tell you about the pros and the cons of it. So the con of one of them, whatever they said, the negative trait can be a grandiose sense of self. Now, I think there's a very thin line between that and just being confident.
Yeah.
Right? And actually, a lot of people teach to be confident. So if you've inherently got something that people are striving to learn.
But the confidence is funny because people want you to be confident, but if you're too confident, you're egotistical. And it's like, where is this line in which I can sit? So
that's such a good thing about it. It's like there is a line and there is this blurred line. Okay. And a lot of people are suppressing their innate gifts because they think they're bad. When actually, if you just slightly tip them over to the other end of the scale, you realize you can use them to your advantage. It's turning adversity into an asset.
Yeah.
It's integrating all parts of ourselves so we become whole, because the majority of you could be some negative things. But if you're suppressing it all, then you're not using much of yourself. So I've used these negative things for good. So grandiose sense of self. Okay, well, that means I believe in myself and I think I can do things better than some. And I'm confident in my ability. Brilliant. Okay, well, I'll use that. There's manipulation as a part of it as well. I see that as persuasion. It can only be the positive, though, if you have the awareness around yourself and you have good intentions. Before, I would have been doing this on autopilot, and I would have been doing it in the wrong way. I would have been manipulating people to sell drugs for me, all sorts of things. Yeah. But if you can know the intention, the only difference between manipulation and persuasion is the outcome. If you're manipulating somebody to do something, if you're persuading someone to do something that's beneficial for them, then it's good. If you're manipulating someone to do something that's harmful for them or beneficial for you, then it's bad. But I will manipulate people into believing in themselves and thinking anything's possible. So you can manipulate people for good
in a positive way.
Yeah, because marketing is manipulation.
Every advert you see is manipulation in some way, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. And it's a good. And apparently, learning marketing is a good thing. So. Yeah. And then you've just quickly to reel them off though. Just so then you've got risk. Impulsivity is the ability to take risks. Lack of fear is bravery. Lack of empathy can mean that you can overcompensate and be more strategically thinking, strategically thoughtful. And there's many others, but every single one can be channeled into a good thing.
It's double-edged, isn't it? I suppose thinking about things being double-edged, looking at the labels. The psychopath one, like if I was to take two labels, being called a buffoon and being called a psychopath, I think I'd prefer the buffoon. The buffoon seems to have a lot more weight than psychopath did. Thinking about how you have been labelled throughout your life, what are the differences between those two in terms of how you interpret them and how you feel about them?
The timeline, the difference between who I was. If someone called me buffoon now, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care at all. It was only because it was coming from my dad, and I internalized that as something deeply, rootly wrong with me, that it had any weight. I practiced radical authenticity. It started small. It started in rehab, actually. For the first time, I shared my story for the first time, and then I realized that, okay, these bad things aren't too bad because it helps me connect with people, and vulnerability is actually a way of having some mutual connection and things like that. And then I sort of edged more and more and more to the point where I actually got to the point where I'm just happy to be who I am. And some people won't like it, and then some people love it though, because it's like, the cheesy quote is, you put out your vibe, you'll attract your tribe. And it's so true. It's like the people that will know me. The psychopath is a sensationalized label that's associated to it, of course, and you will only ever think of the serial killers, okay? But they're that's a tiny percentage, 100%, absolute tiny percentage. It's because, let's talk about serial killers because it's obviously what everyone thinks. Because I did a video recently, hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of comments, everyone's saying this guy's a liar, he's not a psychopath. And look, I'm not point blank sitting here saying I am one. I'm saying I meet the criteria. I've been diagnosed with it. I don't care if I am or not because I'm me. If you want to put me in that bucket, we'll talk about it. But anyway, reason why they say I'm a liar is because they don't know what one is. They really don't know what one is.
I'll be honest. When I heard that, prior to this conversation, prior to the information that you've just given me, if someone has said psychopath to me, I'm instantly thinking, oh, serial killers, madmen sort of thing.
But those people that do that, they've got a combination of things. Usually they're very deeply traumatized and have a very angry view towards the world, and they're looking for revenge in some respect, right? And they are just completely dysfunctional humans because of, for whatever reason. Combine that with psychopathy, you've got the combination to create someone that could. Because I'll be honest with you, I have the ability to be violent. I have the ability to not. I want to be careful because I don't want to come across in the worst light.
Yeah,
with also being honest. But put it this way: if I was in the military or a surgeon or a politician, I could make the decisions to go to war. I could do a heart transplant.
Goes back to the strategic thinking that you were talking about.
Yeah, it's like I can logically make a decision as long as it's for the good. I would be okay with doing it.
Yeah,
and if things did go wrong, I'd be okay with that as well. So these people have the ability to do it, and when they're angry, because there's a lot of people that would probably hate their ex. Let's to use a female hating their male ex, so it doesn't get too difficult in the comments. But if there's a female that's like, I absolutely hate my ex, there's probably a time it's crossed her mind, I'd love to kill him, I'd love to get rid of him.
Yeah.
But then they're completely, obviously consumed by the fact that they wouldn't be able to do that and what they would feel. And there's just certain people that don't feel that as acutely. And if you're dysfunctional and you're fully unaware of who you are as a person, then you can let that run the show and you do terrible things. I'm I've worked on myself so much now that I've compensated for all of my emotions logically. And this is the thing that people really can't understand. Do not have a lack of empathy. I have a lack of visceral felt sense empathy. Like I will never get choked up. I'll never feel anything in my gut, but I will think it.
Yeah.
You know, I can think like that's bad, that's wrong, that's sad. I want to help that person. And I do care. I just don't feel it. So yeah, it is a complicated one.
Going back to, the substance misuse. You've talked about your childhood there. You talk about the abuse that you faced. Most people would maybe look at, if we was to take those things of the childhood, the sexual abuse that you faced, and the substance misuse, people would think of the substance misuse as the escapism. But you said earlier that wasn't the case, and that was the normalcy. Let's unpick it just a little bit more, because I think really that's kind of what I would be thinking if you was to lose yourself in substances in some way that's trying to. I suppose you talk about it in your book, don't you? Do you know about like the escapism and what purpose is that serving you?
Yeah, it's difficult because I'd love to be able to say drugs was because of this, and if we could
it'd be so easy if you was able to pinpoint it.
Rehab would be a day long, wouldn't it?
Course,
right, guys, one thing you need to figure out.
Yeah.
It's like it was a storm, it was a combination. It was a quest to feel. And it was a contradiction quest to numb at the same time, It was a quest to feel something because I felt so numb, but it was also a quest to numb the things that I did feel I didn't want. It's like
going around in a bit of a circle.
But also I like the chaos as well. I was on this self-sabotage. It was the environment. Yeah, it's a very difficult one to know how that kind of progressed. And also there was an element of the lifestyle of selling the drugs and things like that sort of fed into the sort of power and the significance. Like I'd found something that I could do. I had my friends, I was selling drugs, I was making money. And I was like, my life is better like this than not having it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a difficult one to pinpoint exactly the root cause of it. I think it was a combination of a lot of things.
I think one of the parts about the book that I found interesting was when you described standing in front of the scratch prison mirror, and this was your third prison sentence as well, and realising that the common denominator in all the chaos was yourself. We've got that. You describe hearing a voice in your head repeating that it's you, and I think what's interesting about that is often when people are struggling with drug addiction, it has to be everybody else's fault. They don't like to look internally and believe that, this is happening because of me. But you've got to that point. But what I'm interested in is what was different about that time to all the other times before?
Yeah.
How come it took so long to realise that it's you?
Yeah. First of all, it's kind of like we were talking about earlier. It's easy to accept that you don't want something than it is to, admit that you do, but it's difficult to get. It's kind of similar. It's easy to play the blame game.
Of course, yeah.
It's easy to blame everything and everyone around us for why we are where we are, because then we don't take responsibility and we don't have to go through the discomfort of actually, working on it or, admitting that we're at fault. But it all happens subconsciously. That's the thing. So I was completely unaware. I'd never once thought I could change or I was the problem. It's kind of new. I guess I knew my life was not going on the right track, but it was just, I guess, a weird element of, that I thought that I was in control of some parts and the other parts were, what had happened to me. But I just didn't think that I could change it or I was the real cause of it. Because just because something happens to you doesn't mean to say you have to let it negatively impact you like that. In my mind, it's like, well, this and this has happened. Because other things had happened. Like I walked in and found my dad dead at one point as well. So there was other traumas. This is going to sound extreme, but I slit my it sounds, when I say slit my throat, it sounds more extreme than it is, but I will show the scars this time because the amount of people in the comments that say there's no scars, because they're very light because it was 20 years ago. But I had my first girlfriend and it was the first time where I'd felt like maybe I wasn't this bad person I was. And then she told me she cheated on me and I just went berserk, smashed the kitchen up, knife fell on the floor and I picked it up and just went and just slit my own throat. Obviously only clipped it, but it was clipped an artery and I got section under the Mental Health Act. So anyway, I had these traumas. Actually, where were we going with that? Can you remember?
Just about why it was so different for that time.
Yeah. So I think when these things happen, it's easy to say, well, I'm written off now.
Yeah.
these things have happened to me. They haven't happened to you. It's going to be very difficult to change that. But I didn't think I could change myself. Even my mum said, we all know you're not going to make old bones, Lewis. She'd written me off. She'd accepted you're going to die young. Because I had been, you mentioned in the beginning, like hospital admission. It wasn't one. I mean, that was one I might have mentioned, but there was hundreds. Like I'd wake up, not most, that's an exaggeration, but quite often, I'd say once every 2 weeks, I'd wake up and there would be an ECG sticker on the back of my neck. And I'd pull it up and think, I don't even remember going to hospital, but I've been there for something. It was crazy. I was in there all the time. Broken jaws, just all sorts of crazy stuff. But it was easy to blame everything and everyone around me. And this time was different because something did happen, and I'll share that. But also, I just think it might have been the exact right time. Sometimes there's this perfect moment. And it happened. These breakthrough moments, these epiphany moments, they do happen, but a lot of people dismiss them. And you've got to grab it and run with it. And that's exactly what I did, luckily, because I have always had this very, addictive personality. And I luckily, grabbed onto this addiction of I'm going to change myself. So what happened was I went to prison for this third time. I rang up my friends and said, what are they saying about me? Because again, feeding my ego, my significance, I actually wanted to know what people were saying. Oh, Lewis has gone to prison. It's warped, but it was the only thing I had available to me. And they said, you're on the front page of the paper. And I was kind of happy about it. Thug, boorish and violent was another one. Didn't even know what boorish meant. Apparently it was something to do with, it is something to do with a pig. But
sounded good though for the
yeah, I was like, boorish, that's nice.
Yeah. Makes me sound strong.
Yeah. But then they said my friend posted a picture of you outside the courtroom the day you were sentenced, and a picture of you 7 years before outside the exact same courtroom with the caption above it, nothing changes. And it was just strange because it had come from my friend who was like just about equally as bad as me. And I've heard of things from other people before, and I kind of brushed off it because it came from him. It kind of got me thinking about it. And I kind of thought, I didn't think, I want to change, but I just thought, actually, he's right. Nothing has changed. And I thought, I am back in prison at 24 or 25. And I am, as you would have heard now, doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different result. I didn't have the vocabulary to attach it to that point, but that was kind of what was going through my mind. I was like, oh no, although I think I'm in control and I'm making these choices, I definitely didn't make this choice. And I am here and 7 years have gone by. And it was kind of like, it's going to be another 7 years. So I went back to my prison cell and I looked at myself in the prison mirror, which is just a piece of metal. You can't even actually see yourself because they can't give you mirrors in case you shank people with it and stuff, right? So it's a bit of metal, but you can get a glimmer. And it sounds like a story, but it's the truth. But I looked at myself and I could actually see myself. It was like the first real reflection, and a raw reflection, because I was really looking, even though it was just like this little glimmer. And I just realized that I was the problem. It was me. Because, it wasn't my fault that those things happened. Yeah, ideally they wouldn't have happened, but it's actually my responsibility if I want to fix them, And I realized if I was the problem, then I'm also the solution. And when I say that, people go, well, yeah, of course. And even like now I go, how did I not know I was the problem? But for me at that moment, it was a revelation. It's like, I can change. Because changed to me was, I won't drink whiskey anymore because that's going to be the thing that gets me angry, or I'll take cocaine only on the weekends, or I won't fight in town because they've got CCTV cameras. I only fight in the pub car parks. That was changed to me.
Trying to make like mitigation to the circumstance of what you're going to do. Yeah.
But I thought that's all change was. I didn't think you could change the person you was. I didn't even know. I'd never read a personal development book. Never heard of that personal development didn't exist. So when the concept of changing yourself, I didn't even know you could do it. I thought you were who you were, and that is that. But then when I kind of got it, because I have this addictive personality and this kind of warped, I guess, even grandiose sense of self then, but in an arrogant, kind of warped, it's so hard to explain. But I'll tell you what went through my head. It went fantasy land of, I can change my name. I can move abroad, no one will know me. I can get with some wealthy girl and she can invite me into her family. And I can start, not like a con man, but reinvent. And I just fantasized about that. But that got me through to, I'm going to sign up for a RAPT program. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's Rehabilitation of Addicted Prisoners Trust inside prison. I did maths and English and gym and did all these things. And I started to notice some changes, and that was motivational. And I just wanted more and more and more. The Wrapped program was eye-opening because it was 6 weeks, but it was basic, but it was just enough to not push me away from it, but realize there was something in it. It started off with them literally passing pieces of paper. Well, first of all, they'd say, "How do you feel?" And you go around in a circle, and everyone would just say, "I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm all right." And someone would say, "I'm hungry. I'm all right." And then they give you a bit of paper, and then you've got to look at the feelings, and you've got to go, "I guess I'm a bit frustrated." That's how like emotionally stunted the prison population are. And then it introduced a bit more personal development. And I was seeing a lot of progress as well as in the maths and English and everything I was doing. And I was about to be released after 9 months. And a guest speaker came in to the Wrapped program from a rehab and spoke about this opportunity to go to rehab. And it was a £20,000 6 months thing that was paid for by the government, but only a few spots available. And I was convinced that I wouldn't get it because I wasn't bad. I wasn't bad enough for that. They're not going to accept me, But I realized I needed to keep working on myself. Because actually, during one of these maths and English tests, because you can actually do like qualifications in prison, and I did do a qualification, maths and English in that time. Just before the test, I punched a wall. And I thought, why did I do that? And it's because I was scared of proving my dad right. But I did actually go to the hospital because there wasn't a hospital inside the prison. So I had to go to literally get in a cab with 2 officers, and they take me to the hospital. And when they was going to the hospital, they drove past my area. And the moment I was in my area, I just felt this, like everything had gone. Like all my changes, all my progress had gone. I was ready just to jump out that cab and go straight into the pub and just do everything all over again. I just knew it. I knew it. Because it's like these 2 different environments that felt so different. It was like I left one and just went back to, 9 months ago. So I knew I had to apply for this rehab. And I got in, and they picked me up from the prison gates and took me straight down to the rehab, and the next part of the journey started.
To be fair, what I guess really looking at this now then is this idea that you say it in the book that you don't deserve it, but you will fix it. That's a really powerful distinction because I think it acknowledges what happened to you without letting it define you. How did you learn the difference between understanding all of this trauma that you've carried and taking responsibility for this future that you are now planning as well?
Sorry, the exact question again?
Sorry. So is how, I guess, understanding the differences between obviously the trauma of the past, but taking responsibility for the future, starting clean in the sense of, I guess, does that make sense? It doesn't.
Yeah, I know what you mean. To be honest, I never really. I'm a little bit different to others in the sense where I didn't really ever feel that trauma, and I know it's crazy, but I just.
But it comes back to the diagnosis.
Yeah, so I was never like hurting inside.
Yeah,
it was. There was a bit of a resentment for my dad, and I think they say that resentments keep you sick. I'm sure you've heard of that one, and it was more in the moment the realization that I wasn't. That it was my responsibility. It was like it shifted. It wasn't like I now need to process everything and put this trauma to one side for a minute and everything like that. It was just a realization and an excitement, actually. It wasn't like, oh God, I've the problem, I'm going to have to solve this now. It was like, oh, hang on a minute. Like, I'm the one that can fix this. Like, let's do it. Like, this is a new chapter. This is a new challenge. And I just ran with it. Because like I mentioned, I had that addictive personality. So I just immersed myself into it. I started reading the Blue Book in prison. I went to meetings. And actually the Blue Book, the Alcoholics Anonymous book, that was a game changer for me. That to this day, that was the most powerful personal development book I've ever read. Yeah, because I was just reading myself in a book. I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, what the? This is just me. Every single part of it, And I think the problem with addicts is they feel before they like meet community or meet other addicts and share about it openly, they do feel like they're different from everybody else. I felt different from everybody else. And then when I was reading this book that was literally like just describing me and the way that I thought about things and addiction and stuff, I thought, oh my God, well, if they're all like me and then they've all got recovery, then they've got some hope here. So, yeah, I mean, I just ran with it and sort of saw it as an exciting chapter.
Well, one of the things as well is that idea, and this is what you're talking about now, is nobody's coming to save you. I think that is so important for people to hear because in a weird way, I think I always look at life as in some way you're on this path of school, primary school, secondary school. You might go to college, you might go to university, and then you just come to the end of this road, and I feel like life in some way is almost presented to you in steps, and you get to this point, and I remember getting to that point myself where I thought, what am I supposed to do? What's going to happen now? It's scary, but at the same time, it's empowering to think that nobody is coming to save you. Talk to me about that, because that is a massive thing that is featured in this book. Nobody's coming to save you.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought of something there. Actually, I think I might have seen it on Instagram. I can't claim it, but I think it's like the most empowering thing about realizing, actually, this sounds so cheesy, but it's I can remember it. The best thing about realizing no one's coming to save you is realizing that you can be the hero. Yeah. Right? Because you get to be the person that you've always needed. You get to be the person that's you're gonna be proud of. But yeah, a lot of people are waiting for that magic moment. They are waiting for something to be presented to them. They're hoping, wishing, praying for that moment where things just resolve themselves. But they a lot of the time, most of the time, almost never do.
One of the things as well is the black dot. Talk to me about the black dot, because you argue that people become obsessed with their traumas and their mistakes, and working in a drug and alcohol treatment service, we see that a lot. Yeah,
this is huge. This is probably the biggest concept of the book. You know, the whole turning adversity into an asset, just to kind of explain it, is adversity is obviously something negative that's either happened. It could be happened to you, or it could be that you've done, or it could be the person you think you are. And how can you turn that into an asset, being something good, something you can actually use, not just something you can get through, not something you can just accept, but something you can actually be grateful for, which is a whole different level of transformation. Because a lot of people, they do go to treatment or therapy to just remove the bad things, rather than, transmuting them for good and actually coming out better than where they not getting to baseline, enhancing. So the black dot is the analogy that if you have a white piece of paper and there is a black dot in the middle of the piece of paper, a lot of people will scrunch that paper and throw it away. Yeah. And if they don't, they'll fixate on that black dot, and the perfectionism will be like, well, I'm never going to do anything beautiful on this page because it's already ruined. Yeah. But really, if you zoom out and you see the entire page, it's just a tiny black dot. And it's just a small part of a bigger picture, and it actually only makes sense because of that dot. Otherwise, it would just be a blank screen. And it's just about learning to accept that the black dot's there, but knowing that you still have the rest of the white space and the opportunity around it, which is obviously vastly huge in comparison to this small, tiny black dot. But everyone will fixate on it. And then there's the kind of extra added layer of, because I did a TEDx talk on this, and it was called Turning a Black Dot White. And the actual theme of the TEDx talk was Event Horizon, which was Einstein's theory of the space around the black hole. So, I mean, I'm not crazy academic in that world, but I thought, how can I spin this into a personal development story? But I had this black dot concept, and from a bit of research, a lot of astrophysicists believe that the black hole isn't actually the end. It can be a portal to something new. So what about if this black dot on the middle of the page isn't something to run from, isn't something to hide from, it's actually something to lean into? And I can tell you from experience, it's exactly what I did. I looked at all my past, all the bad things I'd done. I thought, I've been in prison. I've done some horrible things to people. I've got a lack of emotion. People think I'm cruel and heartless. I've spent my whole life thinking I was stupid. I've got nothing to my name. I'm 25 years old and I'm coming out of prison with a £50 discharge grant. I'm fucked. But actually, they've turned out to be the story that's got me on this podcast, to write a book, to speak on stage, to help millions of people. They've ended up becoming every part of it I'm grateful for. They've turned me into the person I am. They've made me force myself to work through those blocks to the point where I'm a stronger person. They've given me the gift of helping other people through those same scenarios. They've allowed me to miss the normal life that I didn't want, because through having to, drastically shift everything, I've sort of pushed through that normality into, a life. It's so cheesy, but a life of my wildest dreams, right? In terms of, I never thought that I could do this, but because I say, when you get to like rock bottom, you have the luxury of working on yourself, because most people day to day, life is okay. Life is normal. There's no reason to read a personal development book. There's no reason to do a course. There's no reason to go to rehab. Rehab is the best personal development transformational experience you'll ever have.
Yeah.
You know, forget the drugs and alcohol. I mean, in my treatment center specifically, they barely spoke about it. I thought that's what it was going to be about, but it's not. It's about learning about yourself and why you're doing it and just developing as a person. And you come out there feeling like your head's been emptied and you're completely new. But you only get the luxury of doing that when things get bad. So again, if you've got the black dot, it means that you're going to be able to have the luxury of being able to then use the white space, because normal people, they're just using the center. They might not have the black dot, but they're still only using the center of that page. Whereas if you can really focus on everything that you have, you can integrate everything into a whole.
Well, when did you stop seeing yourself as that black dot? And is there a correlation? I mean, one of the things that we like to explore in this podcast is individuals' rock bottom moments as well. Is there a correlation between your rock bottom moment and when you stopped seeing yourself as this black dot, metaphorically?
I mean, I know I used the example of rock bottom moment there. For me, I didn't really have that rock bottom moment. I'll be honest, because I'm so extreme. I think I could have gone lower.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think I was quite lucky to get out where I did. I was like on that escalator going down, as they say, and I was like, it was going down in the basement, and I was like, no, fuck it, I'm getting out.
And that's incredible after like 3 prison sentences, the diagnosis, and all that sort of, and obviously the throat slitting.
I mean, a lot of people, that is a rock. Yeah.
You know, they'd think that is, but this is the thing that we love to explore. How subjective the rock bottom is.
Yeah.
Because I've had people's rock bottoms where I've thought, I've had worse days than that.
I've had worse weekends.
Do you know what I mean? And then for other people, that was the thing that I've got to change my life around. So it's always interesting looking at it from a subjective point. But yeah, when did you stop seeing yourself as this black dot?
I mean, I can't say everything all clicked into place. It was a progression, and it still is now. Like everything is clicking. You know. It's embracing more and more and more. Like I talk about radical authenticity, becoming more and more of who you are. And 10 years from now, I'm going to look back on myself now and go, fucking hell, that wasn't even me then, you know, but I was getting there. Because, you know, I do think, you know, it's a bit cheesy, but I do think there's an element of rebirth when you go through recovery, because you're stripping back all this layers of who you're not and you're going back to who you are. So you're starting from scratch. And that's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. I found it really challenging in those early stages. I looked in the mirror when I was dressing differently and I thought, who the fuck are you? Like, you sell out. Like, I would literally say that to myself, like, and I'd be disgusted at the look of myself. And I was thinking, what am I doing? And it was a really conflicting battle between who's the real me? Is it the person I was, or is it the person I'm becoming? And it's that limbo moment was hard. But when you push through it, you realize, oh, okay, this is me. Actually, there was a moment in rehab that was really powerful for me, because I would have these battles with myself and I go, what the fuck am I doing in here? Like, I shouldn't be in here. Like, what have I done? And I realized I had these two voices that were like, one cheering me on, one was trying to drag me back. So I wrote myself a note. I said, to Lewis, this is the real you. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. Keep going. This too shall pass, which I learned in rehab.
Oh, yeah. I love that this too shall pass, yeah.
Love, the real Lewis. And when I had that battle with myself, I just look up at that note and be like, oh, yeah, okay. And then after a while, and then I'd go and sign it after I had the battle. And then after a while, covered in signatures. And then I realized I didn't need to look at the note anymore. But anyway, the point I'm making is I was evolving. You know, the reason I call it personal development is because it's development, right? It's developing. And even over the more recent years, you know, with the documentary coming out about the psychopathy and me going, do you know what? Yeah, I am actually a bit like that. I am a bit manipulative. I am a bit, you know, I can do those things. And being okay with it and getting the backlash and, you know, absorbing that and being like, okay, that's okay as well. It's like I'm learning more and more about myself and caring less about other people and sort of, yeah, I can't say there's these there are defining moments, but it's a journey.
This is it. I think we do like to try and look at the world in these black and white ways, or to have these defining moments. But I think one of the things that I really liked in the book was when you talked about addiction, you use like almost like a Photoshop metaphor of transparency. So think about the trigger or the craving, replace it with a healthier thought. So for instance, if you was thinking about alcohol, think about an apple juice, and then imagine it. And you talked about these layers and the transparency, but there's something in that as well, in the same way that you could slow the transparency down from that one image to the other. That in a way is kind of what life is like in terms of how we progress as people. It isn't the definitive point.
It's not like you go Photoshop. It's like you said,
it's really, it was a really nice metaphor to look at it.
And something I want to share, because I'm all about this. I'm about radical authenticity. I am not perfect. I have my flaws. I'm getting better. But I don't want to be perfect as well. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the Stephen Bartlett thing recently about three drinks ruined his life. I mean, 3 years of cocaine didn't ruin my life. I was having a great time, but I had more than 3 years. But anyway, I've relapsed a few times, and I don't want people to think that has to be their journey, because I know that I remember sitting in the rooms and the people said, "Oh yeah," because they justify their relapse. You got to have your first relapse.
Journey,
No, it's not. It's not. I don't think it was at all. It's just it crept up on me. I kind of thought, oh, maybe I'm all right now. Maybe my life is different. I wonder what would happen. I flirted with it, and I can tell anyone listening to this, you can't. No matter how many, I'm apparently a personal development expert at some point, and I've been sober for 6 years. Not a drop, no drugs, no nothing. I wouldn't even drink. I wouldn't even have a mince pie because of the sherry that I thought could have been in it. I was told jails, institutions, and death.
Yeah,
and I was like, I'm going to live by that because I'm black and white. I'm extreme. I'm go all in. And then I flirted with it, and it was all right. I thought, I have a drink. Oh, actually, I'm all right. I can have one. So I'll have 2 or 3 actually, and then a couple of days I haven't had one. Oh, I must be all right now. And then I've got drunk. But that was all right. I didn't actually beat someone up that night. And then, I've got drunk again. Now I'm drinking every day. Oh, shit. So, and I've tried that probably 3 times, to be honest. And look, we don't have to have it perfect. I think a lot of people, I remember being in rehab thinking about crazy things like, but what about when I get married? I won't even have a glass of champagne. Who gives a shit about stuff? But your brain thinks about those things. I think at the end of the day, for me, I don't want anyone to be looking at a perfect example of recovery and thinking that's what they have to strive for. It can get messy. It can be trial and error. There can be some things you replace it for. I'm an obsessive workaholic. I don't know what I'd do if I weren't working. Like I wake up and work and go to bed working, and that is my new thing. So I'm not fully fixed. Of course,
because this is the thing with addiction, isn't it? So many people will replace one thing with another. Now, I would argue it's much healthier for you to be a workaholic than someone who's smashing in cocaine. Do you know what I mean? So
exactly.
It's the lesser of the two evils.
And I'll be honest, I've picked up a vape, right? And I've got a chapter. How about this for authenticity, guys? I've got a chapter on here about obliterating your habits, yet sometimes I'll vape. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to vape, and I could 100% stop it, and I have. Yeah. But every now and again, I'll pick it up and have a bit, because I'm like, do you know what? If I pick up that vape and I have a bit of that because I fancy it, and I don't pick up a cocaine,
there you go.
I think that's okay.
Yeah, it's a nice trade.
We don't want to be Stephen Bartlett.
Of course, yeah.
We don't have to be Stephen Bartlett.
Of course, yeah.
We can be a better version of who we were,
Yeah. What would you say now to thinking about, I mean, how old are you now, Lewis?
36.
36. So thinking, what's changed in the last 11 years, what would you say to 25-year-old Lewis now?
I mean, I'd like him to know what's possible, because if, the earlier I would have, well, at that point, obviously I started to change, but maybe an earlier version, like an 18 or a 16-year-old, I'd like to him have known what was possible for him, because I had no aspirations. When I left, I got expelled from 15, but at 16 we were allowed to leave back then. And I remember that, of course, there were some people that went to sixth form, some people that went to college and to go to uni, and then there were some people that just left. I never once thought, which one should I do? I just assumed, of course I will leave when I'm 16, because that's for them, that's not for me. I just didn't have any concept of any capabilities, what was possible for me. I was living in a village outside Watford, just outside sort of north of London, and everyone was kind of doing their own thing. No one was breaking away and doing anything special. So I had no aspirations or any sort of positive influence. So I want him to know what is possible, I'd also want him to know that he's not bad, because that identity obviously really tripped me up. And I'd also want to tell him that it's going to be okay. And I would, but in all of that, I would, if I'm honest, do you know what I would say? Absolutely nothing, because it's exactly where I was supposed to go. It ended up where it needed to be. Yeah. I'm grateful for all those experiences. I wouldn't go back and change any of them. The whole butterfly effect. Of course, if I changed that, then okay, I might not have done those things, but then I wouldn't have done these things. And the impact and the ripple effect that I've had, I feel, is more positive than the negative things that I've done now. I feel like I've made up for it.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, that would have been a really nice place to end it, but I won't forgive myself if I don't ask this, because we did talk about your father early on. Did you say your father's passed away now?
Yeah.
I wanted to explore what that relationship was like. Did he get to see you now you were clean, sober?
No. So
how does that make you feel that he never got to see this version of you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I've still kind of got the the old limiting beliefs of what our relationship was. And my dad would always put me down. So part of me thinks he would go, no, you just a fucking attention-seeking bloody con man, you know.
Yeah, so there'd still be some negative there.
I think it would be hard to deny at this point.
Yeah.
So I would love to think, he would be proud of me. I wouldn't know what that would ever be like because I never had that. Of course, but yeah, I've done some like extensive breath work and stuff where I've actually had some kind of altered state experiences where we've almost had conversations before, which is similar. So yeah, I've had a bit of, conversation, not with him, but with like some version of myself, which has been helpful, but who knows?
So Lewis, today we've spoken a lot about your book. If people were interested in picking this up, how do they find it and why should they pick this book up as well?
So it's taken me 5 years to write. It's published by Penguin Random House, which is a big deal. They've really supported me to make this book as good as it possibly can be. It's called Unlimited. Turn your adversity into an asset. It covers a lot of ground. Obviously my whole transformation is very much story-based, but it's got a lot of lessons. You mentioned there during this interview about the transparency of pulling up the layers of Photoshop. So there is tangible tools and techniques you can use to change your habits, to change your identity, to break down limiting beliefs, to push through fear, to take imperfect action, to embrace your shadow self, which are these shadowy, dark parts of our personality traits that we suppress and deny. Everything we've spoken about today is taught in this book, and I really think it's going to impact a lot of lives, not necessarily just people that are suffering with addiction, but people who feel a bit blocked, a bit stuck, a bit like they don't have what it takes. This is what's going to help you become unlimited. So you can get it on any major retailer. It's a benefit of Penguin. They've pushed it everywhere. But easy one is Amazon. Just type it in. Just been launched right now as of this podcast going out. So grab a copy. You can get it www.unlimitedbook.co.uk, or of course you can just type it into Amazon. And I'd love to hear what you think. Post it up on Instagram. Tag me in @Lewis Raymond Taylor. And I'd love to give it a reshare for you and tell me what you thought.
Lewis, thank you so much for joining me on Believing People. I like to end all of my podcasts with a series of quick fire questions, not related to what we have spoken about. My first question is, what is your favourite word?
Buffoon. I'm joking. Unlimited.
Least favourite word?
Buffoon. Well, quickly just to end it, you know what was, and I mentioned this in the book, do you know what was funny about the word buffoon? Like I mentioned, I never knew what it meant. Yeah. And it was actually only later on where someone said, like you said, what does buffoon actually mean? I thought, I don't know, actually. Yeah. And it's crazy how like language can, affect us in that way. So I actually researched what it meant. And I actually forget exactly the exact definition now, but it was something like absurd and amusing. And I thought,
in some way, it almost sounds like a compliment, doesn't it?
And I thought, I can live with that. Yeah. I'm all right with that. I'm pretty absurd, and I'd like to think I'm quite amusing as well. So thanks, Dad. And it's just crazy how that can get flipped on its head.
But it goes back to what you're saying. It was how it was said to you, wasn't it?
Yeah. But the favourite word, unlimited. Yes. Exponential growth.
Nice. Least favourite word?
Buffoon.
Tell me something that excites you.
I love business. I know it's really sad. It's not sad, but I know it's like not the right answer. But yeah, business is the thing that really gets me going. Yeah, it really gets me going. I like the impact. I like the growth from it. Yeah, it's what excites me the most. I also love to travel. So I'm actually, what a lot of people don't know about is I'm an ultra minimalist. Up until recently, I've lived out of a suitcase and a carry-on the last 10 years. Yeah. And sometimes I might live in an Airbnb, but then I'll just pack up and, leave everything and
go in a bag, yeah.
And I've traveled the world. And recently I decided I didn't even want that, and I've gone down to hand luggage. Oh, wow. So I don't own a house, I don't own a car. I just love to move. Freedom is really important to me. The business is focused on, our tagline is coach your way to freedom, because it's about how can you help people and build a freedom-based business in the process. And I don't know whether it was because I was locked up in prison or I was in this sort of mental
You've used
freedom.
To been having very little, maybe?
Yeah. And who knows whether, Dr. John DeMartini talks about voids create values. It's like, I think because I didn't have that, I want that. I seek that out. But yeah, I love to travel. So I'm probably going to be going... I've constantly traveled, but usually for sort of 6 months at a time. But I'm going to start doing a bit of backpacking and stuff again for the first time in a while to really sort of explore.
That'll be nice. Tell me something that doesn't excite you.
Doesn't excite me. Football. Seriously.
Not at all?
No, hate it.
Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
The notification that I've made a sale on my phone.
Nice. It's the dopamine hit, isn't it? I suppose, yeah. What sound or noise do you hate?
People eating.
Yeah, I get that, yeah. What's your dream job?
The job I'm doing now, of course.
There you are. So,
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, what I often say is, if you wasn't doing this,
Yeah.
what job do you see yourself doing?
I would say I thought it was an actor, but an actor.
Yeah.
But I'd have to be a really high one because I did a couple of days on a shoot a little while ago, fulfilling my life's dream, and I realised it wasn't actually. It was handed around a lot of the time, and I was like, well, actually, I don't know. I think I was enjoying what I was doing more.
Yeah, I've
So,
heard that.
but yeah, acting at a high, cool level for sure.
Least favourite job you can imagine doing, like when you was sat looking out the bus at the normalcy of people.
Oh God, some form of corporate accountancy or something.
Yeah. And then lastly, should God exist, what would you like to hear him say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You didn't do it conventionally, but you did it right, son. You're in.
There we go. Look, thank you so much.
I'm sorry not to leave that on a powerful one, but hopefully I've shared some powerful stuff throughout.
You have. No, thank you so much for joining me on Believe in People.
Thank you.
And if you've enjoyed this episode of the Believe in People podcast, we'd love for you to share it with others who might find it meaningful. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and leaving a review will help us reach more people and continue challenging stigma around addiction and recovery. For additional resources, insights and updates, explore the links in this episode description. And to learn more about our mission and hear more incredible stories, you can visit us directly at believeinpeoplepodcast.com.